Let's talk about the skeletal system. Bones. Stronger and more elastic, but many times lighter than steel. In fact, if you tried to replace your approximately 10 kgs of skeleton with steel, it would weigh close to 400 kgs. That's a lot of weight to lift every time you want to take a step or pick your nose. Added to these remarkable structural features, bone can repair itself, as anyone who has had a broken arm or leg can attest. While you might think of bone in your mind's eye as dry, white, hard things that get in the way of eating a good steak, or the supporting structures that our muscles are draped over, they are in fact a hugely active and dynamic tissue. Bones are living, breathing, regenerating organs which are completely replaced about every 10 years. Combined with joints, bones make up the skeletal system. As with everything in anatomy, the bones of our body, all 206 of them, have specific names. Most of you will know the dim bone song, but do you know the real name for the thigh bone? Or how many different bones and joints make up your foot bone? If you are a visual and or auditory person, then this video might provide a helpful way of learning or reviewing the names of some of the bones. Add new names that you haven't come across before into your Moodle glossary. There are 4 kinds of bones: long, short, flat, and irregular, and 3 types of cartilage: hyaline cartilage, elastic cartilage, and fibrocartilage, which make up the skeletal system. The skeletal system is also divided up into the axial skeleton, or the bones of the longitudinal axis, and the appendicular skeleton, or all those other bones which are appended to the axial skeleton. When writing definitions about each bone, try and identify the type of bone and which of the 2 skeletons it belongs to. Those of you particularly in osteopathy and medical imaging will be going way more in depth into the skeletal system and identifying and locating bony landmarks. Aside from being a particularly strong and funky coat hanger for the skin and muscle, the skeleton has a number of other highly important but less well-known roles, including physical protection of our internal organs via the pelvis, rib cage, and of course the skull, protection from pathogens through its role in the formation of immune cells and platelets for clotting, movement in the form of levers on which muscles can pull and the joints between the levers, and nourishment in the form of fat storage, mineral storage, and the production of red blood cells, those useful little red things that carry all the important stuff to and from the cells. How do they manage to be so strong, so flexible, so adaptable, and so versatile? It all comes down to their structure. Bones are primarily made up of connective tissue. The sciencey explanation is that lots of long strands of really tough protein called collagen come together to perform a similar function to rebars in concrete. Then hydroxyapatites, or mineral salts, largely calcium-based, and carbohydrate protein complexes known as glycoproteins and proteoglycans act like concrete to create a really tough matrix in which the collagen can sit. Collagen allows the bones to be flexible with really high tensile and torsional strength, while the calcium or bone salt matrix provide the compressive strength that allows bones to withstand many impacts. And then there are all the holes in your bones which contribute to how light they are. Nope, bones are not the solid things you thought they were. To start with, all the long bones are hollow, with bone marrow stored inside. This channel has a specific anatomical name. Can you find it? There are also 2 different types of bone: the compact bone, which is generally what you see and which looks solid enough, and spongy bone, which looks pretty much like a sponge, with lots of holes and bubbles through it. Compact bone is made up of osteons or Haversian systems, which are like small tubes of bone tissue containing nerves and blood vessels, because how else would bones stay alive? These cylinders run parallel to the axis of the bone. The seemingly random arrangement of the bone in the spongy bone is actually collagen fibers with associated bone salts which align along lines of stress. This is a reason why bones need to be so adaptable, to be able to change their structure to withstand any new stress they may come under, like when you start a new sport. So how do bones adapt, heal, and remodel themselves? Why, through their cells, of course. 5 different types of cells. We have osteogenic cells, which are stem cells or bone precursor cells. They can become any type of bone cell. Osteoblasts, these are the bone builders making collagen and bone salts. Osteocytes and bone lining cells are the maintenance workers maintaining the bone matrix. And osteoclasts are the demolition guys who come in, break down, and pac-man the bone tissue that is not needed or damaged in a process known as bone resorption. You have probably all heard of osteoporosis, which is when we start to lose the mineral strength of our bones, or bone mineral density. There are many factors and systems which contribute to this condition, but one of the ways we can reduce it from occurring, particularly in the elderly, is to increase the weight-bearing activity of the individual. This leads to stress on the bone, and as we have seen in homeostasis, if we change something, then the body responds to fix that something. In bone, this is in the form of making more bone tissue to increase its strength. Bone growth is regulated by hormones, which I won't be going into detail about now, but links to the endocrine system, which we will see at a later date. The hormones cause bones to grow or get stronger, or to break down and release calcium into the blood. This is part of the calcium homeostasis cycle. So back to the structure of the bone. When we are born, we actually have about 300 bones. Yes, that's more bones than an adult. Many of these bones, like the skull, fuse as we mature. Babies' bones are also largely made up of hyaline cartilage. Ossification or transformation into bone occurs throughout the cartilage until only the epiphyseal growth plate and the two ends of the epiphysis remain as cartilage. During childhood and youth, lengthening of the long bones, what we see as getting taller, occurs at the epiphyseal plates, adding more bone tissue to the diaphysis of the bone. The epiphyseal ends are also remodeled to make sure that all parts of the bone remain proportional. Once you have finished growing, the epiphyseal plates become ossified, and after that, unfortunately, short of leg lengthening surgery, you cannot get any taller. The final piece of bone structure to be aware of is the periosteum and endosteum. These are very thin connective tissue layers which cover the external and internal surface of the bone. The periosteum is rich in blood vessels and nerves which supply the bone, rich in osteogenic cells for bone growth, and has tufts of collagen fiber which extend into the fibrous layer of the bone matrix, providing anchor points to the bone. In some areas, these perforating fibers are extremely dense in order to provide secure attachment points between bones and tendons of muscles and ligaments. Attachment points of muscles can often be distinguished on a bone as ridges or projections due to the stress of the muscle pulling on the bone. It is these ridges which allow forensic artists to reconstruct a likeness of a face from a skull, gauging the size of muscle from the size of the bone marking. Once all the muscles of the face have been modelled onto the skull in clay, then skin is added and photos can be taken. Missing persons have been linked to many a John or Jane Doe in this manner. The final part of the skeletal system to address are the joints. Joints vary in shape from hinge, ball and socket, gliding, saddle, and condyloid, vary in structure, including synovial, fibrous, and cartilaginous joints, and also by how much movement they allow, none, a small amount, or completely free movement. Depending on where your career is heading will dictate just how in-depth your study of bones should be. Those of you doing medical imaging and osteopathy, and to a lesser extent nursing, will need to be familiar with the names of bones, ligaments, and joints, so it's best to start using these terms now so they become second nature. Stress fractures and osteoporosis are common injuries that any of you may come across in both elderly and people with drug or alcohol addictions, or individuals who are malnourished due to economic status or mental illness. And understanding why these people are at risk and ways to combat the issues will be beneficial to your career. As with the core concepts video, this video is designed to briefly expose you to the concepts that are important to understand regarding the skeletal system and give you the terms that will help you to search for further information.